All right, Tyler, man, whenever you want to start, just got yourself in, bud.
I got one more. Let me look up one more fact I need real quick. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Okay, I got it.
Yeah, man.
Okay. Um, I'll count myself in about a minute. 3, 2, 1. You are now listening to Know the Score, presented by the CSPN. You can visit our website at knowthescore.cspn.us. Follow us on Twitter at KTSPod and keep the conversation going using the hashtag KTSPod. I am your host, Tyler Ball. You can find me on Twitter at TA Ball number one. I'm here today with my co-host and my partner in crime, Don Delarente, and you can find him on Twitter at Don Delarente. What's going on, Don?
Hey, what's going on, Tyler? How are you?
I'm good, man. But we're kind of close to the NFL season. I'm a bit excited.
Yes, yes. Don't like to see the training camp reports of injuries, but it just goes with, this time of year.
All right, today we're going to preview the AFC East as we are really 7 Saturdays away from uh, kickoff weekend. So, of course, we picked the AFC East to start off with because they are the division where the Super Bowl champions reside. That would be the New England Patriots. Um, but first, I want to still keep our mind fresh on basketball. And while it's the summer and it's AAU, so sometimes you have to take things with a grain of salt. But at the same time, one of the biggest stories in the country is the Big Baller brand. So now that Lonzo Ball has kind of begun his takeover, finishing as the MVP of the NBA Summer League, we go to the baby of the Big Baller crew, LaMelo Ball, as he got a chance to shine on a national stage as his Big Baller brand team took on uh, SC Supreme AAU team, which is the squad of the number two player in the 2017 senior class, Zion Williamson, who you may have seen on YouTube with highlight reel dunks. He's about 6'8", 240 pounds, uh, kind of built like a bigger version of LeBron James, and when he was in high school, very explosive. Uh, and people have been waiting for this matchup for quite a while. Um, the game uh, packed with a small exhibit hall known as the Cashman Center. approximately 3,500 attended. Several NBA stars such as Andrew Wiggins, Dame Lillard, Eric Gordon, Thon Maker, Jamal Murray, and of course Lonzo Ball were in attendance. LeBron James was considering coming into the building, and his security team advised him not to try because the game was oversold and jam packed. Um, the game actually lived up to the hype. Um, SC Supreme, which was a better squad, ended up winning 104-92. Um, However, LaMelo, in his really his first major competition of the year, he shined with scoring 31 points with 9 assists and 7 rebounds. Um, got his team stayed pretty much within himself. Not too many wild shots until his team was, until the game was already decided. But uh, he looked pretty good. Um, Zion Williamson uh, ended up with 28 points. He didn't get to display the highlight reel dunks because Big Baller Brand decided to double team him every time he got the ball. However, he did ice the game with a breakaway off of a LaMelo turnover, which was what the crowd came to see. So several media left the game impressed, and so far, I believe personally that LaMelo Ball will be a star in the making. However, he's got to deal with his dad. Um, Don, we were discussing before we aired just the effect of his dad and how uh, LaMelo is, he's got 2 years with his father before he assumedly joins the UCLA Bruins. Can you describe how his father may be a positive or a negative in this stage of LaMelo's development?
To me, as we were talking, before we came on, I think that LaMelo has his own charisma that he might not, as speaking as LeVar, may not need to be as out front with him because I think personally LaMelo has his own type of charisma that's going to put him out front wherever he goes on his own. And, his dad, I think, might make it a little bit too much. Where I think Lonzo's personality was a little bit more reserved. He didn't have that natural outward charisma that you can see, and so I think that it was warranted for LeVar to, pump him up and get him out there because he probably would have just been another face in the crowd without it. It was very calculated, I thought, because the real hype from LeVar Ball didn't really come until towards the end of the season. And then after the tournament, then it was all about, my boy is going to do this and my boy is going to do that. And, we're going to bring the Lakers back and blah, blah, blah. Because I don't know if the Lakers were really talking about drafting uh, Lonzo Ball before, LeVar started hyping it and putting it, this is my destiny. This is what I saw for my son. And now they in a position where they can make it come true and we're going to make it happen. And so, and with the personality that Lonzo has, it worked because, he wasn't going to go out there and hype himself. But LaMelo, I think he's got his own thing going on, and LeVar just needs to chill. He's got Lonzo where he want him to be. LiAngelo is at UCLA. He's on his way. So, you've done what you said you wanted to do. So now just lay back and chill out a little bit. You don't have to go so hard. You've proven to everybody that you can do it. You've proven, you can get your kids to the upper echelon of basketball in Los Angeles and California. So, fall back and coast a little bit.
Yeah, I'm starting to uh, have some concerns because now he's letting his personal views kind of dictate. Um, it's going to be associated with the brand. He had an incident where he was given a technical foul by a women's official, and behind the scenes, there was the decision was aided to remove that official from not only from the game, um, from her next assigned game. Also, not only did they replace that official, they added a second women's official to LeVar's next game to show some solidarity. Uh, that's a point where he has spoken out against his designs for the Big Baller brand, not meant for women, and uh, he's used one of his monikers, "Stay in Your Lane," to retort um, some criticism about knocking not making apparel geared towards women. And then, of course, a YouTube video surfaces with uh, three young ladies. Uh, they were marketed as friends of the three the three the three boys, presumably their girlfriends, um, coming out in Big Baller brand crop tees. So you know, I think that LeVar needs to sometimes fall back on some of his personal views and remain focused on his uh, his players and obviously his children. I mean, they're his children first, then they're his players. So I don't think he's going to have an effect on Lonzo's career going forward, as Lonzo is a Laker, and uh, you're not going to go up against Magic Johnson in Los Angeles. He knows that. That's not a battle you want to fight, a battle that you're going to win. Uh, right now, I think the focus needs to be on making LaMelo the future star that he can be. Um, Adidas has gotten behind Chino Hills. Actually, they outfit the entire team. As a matter of fact, the Big Baller Brand AAU team is probably 95% of the team that's going to be the varsity of Chino Hills basketball. So a lot of these guys you're going to be seeing for the next 2 years or so with LaMelo. As LaMelo matures and gets better, these guys are going to get better too. Um,
Well, I
but
think that the worst version of LeVar Ball is clearly the coach, LeVar Ball. You know, the incidences that that were coming out earlier in the summertime and the spring about just what he did to the undermine the old coach and get into the role of being the coach, and then these actions of refusing the technical and at a camp that he was invited to. It wasn't like that they were going to be there one way or the other. Adidas sent out the special invitation, and then he's up there becoming more the focus than the actual kids on the court. And that's where I have a problem with the act. What I'm saying? It's one thing to do this during when no basketball is being played and you're banging the drum for your kids, but once they're actually on the court, then you definitely need to fall back and not be the sideshow and turn yourself into the main event when everybody's here to watch the kids.
and here is another issue um, that I have also. Um, he is pointing to the fact that he really believes that the Big Baller brand, meaning him, is box office. He's starting to see the fact that these crowds are coming to see his team play, and he feels like he is a part of the brand. I mean, yes, he has a big role in it, but is the brand bigger than him is the question. And now
Well,
when you got all these crowds
because
out there, here you go. He's going to make an argument.
well, because the kids are minors right now. What I'm saying, except for Lonzo. So yeah, everything has to come through him. So I could see that. Like he got from being just the overzealous, my kid is so good, dad, to being on all the ESPN shows, to being on Monday Night Raw. So, of course, he's starting to see that, yeah, me running my mouth is getting me into places 2 years ago I couldn't dreamed of. So, it's not like it doesn't have its merit.
Yeah, and I think that eventually it's got to be about the kids. I mean, you know, you don't. I mean, I don't test his fatherhood because his fatherhood's not a part of the discussion, but you can talk about his coaching, which I don't think is any different from any other uh, kids that's coaching. I mean, there was a video that surfaced after they lost where he clearly points out that LaMelo was a focal point of the loss. I mean, LaMelo was selfish. LaMelo took bad shots. I mean, he simply pointed that out. Um, However, because it's LeVar Ball, he's talking about he loses his, the selling point of the video is that he loses his mind, and it's, he's laying into LaMelo. Nothing different from what you see from any other level of coaching, where the coach talks to the star player. That's what it's about. He points out the weaknesses of the star, uh, warning the star that the game isn't bigger than he is. That's all he was saying. He spoke the truth. I don't have an issue with him actually coaching until he goes into parts that aren't a part of the game. And yes, he pulled his team up off the floor for cheating. While he pulled his team off the floor because he felt the rest for cheating his kids in a game that they were up by 10 points. So what you saying? I mean, I know you have principles, but at the same time, your players can go out there and be bigger than adversity that's in front of them. So they were already proving that, having had a 10-point lead. So yes, I don't think that was the wise move at that time.
Yeah, so, hopefully, like we're saying, he can kind of take he's definitely playing off of the Richard Williams playbook, and hopefully he can do like Richard did and get to a point where he can say, okay, my work is done. I can fall back and just let me enjoy my kids being great. And now let everybody put me on camera and talk about me and saying, hey, I used to be the crazy guy that used to talk loud, but actually I was the prophet. And, look at what I gave to the world. And that's kind of how Richard Williams just kind of faded graciously into the success of his daughters.
And you look at Earl Woods, obviously until he was no longer with us, he eventually took a back seat after the Hello World campaign. Tiger kind of brought him back to the forefront after he won the U.S. Open. How, but his father took a step back, um, and we hope that LeVar eventually, and yes, he does have a brand to promote. That's a little bit different, but at the same time, ironically, he wears the T-shirt "Stay in your lane," and I don't think a message or slogan is any more fitted. And I hope that LeVar Ball actually follows the advice that he's giving out to his detractors, and stay within his lane. Um, as we move forward into the National Football League, we just want to remind you that we have a sister podcast out now, the Gridiron Gals. Uh, want to give a shout out um, to Rita, the NFL chick, and Chels at Chels is Right on Twitter. Um, they have a football themed podcast here on the CSPN. Their first cast of the season is out right now, and we invite you to listen. So we at Know the Score kind of take a backseat to them when it comes to all things football. However, uh, they actually take a backseat to us and everything else. So um, the Gridiron Guys give you everything you need when it comes to the pigskin. So we invite you to listen to them all season long, whether it be college or pro football. So All you have to do is just go on down iTunes or go on SoundCloud while it's still around and download the Gridiron Gals and just give them a listen. And I can tell you now that they're great people to hang out with. I've actually met them in person. Uh, Chell's best friend and I are old friends, so we've kind of known each other for quite a while. Rita is hilarious, uh, and they go hard for their teams. Rita is a Baltimore Ravens fan, while Chels is a Dallas Cowboy fan, just like me. So we can, we identify with the same sentiment. But they give they give you football not only from a women's perspective, but a fan's perspective as well. So Gridiron Gals on the CSPN. Tune in today. We look forward to the NFL, of course. We're now in training camp. As of today, all teams, all players will be in participating in camp, and we have some holdout news in addition to injuries. Don, I've got three specific holdouts that we can look at before we get into our preview. One is one of the best defensive tackles in the game, Aaron Donald, uh, for the LA Rams. For the LA Rams, you look at Le'Veon Bell, of course, for the Steelers, who did not sign his franchise tender yet. Um, you could also look at um,
Donald Penn, left tackle
Donald
for the
Penn,
Raiders.
left tackle, yes, for the LA Raiders, who is he believes he's outplayed his contract. So just talk about the holdouts and how important those players are to their teams.
The first thing that jumps out at me are these are players that play positions that tend to have a high injury rate during training camp and preseason, defensive line, running back. Um, so one thing is definitely an injury concern, I'm sure, that they're looking at as well. It's not mandatory that I don't be here. I'm going to make my grievances known and I'll be there August 15th or whenever they have to report. I know that Le'Veon Bell, since he's still under contract, he has a date that he actually has to sign the franchise tag and come to camp. And basically, he's going to wait up until that day before he does any type of moves. So he's just playing the game out the way the game needs to be played out in his best interest and for his health. And I'm pretty sure that's what Aaron Donald and Donald Penn are thinking as well. I know that we brought up when Kirk Cousins was, they were coming up on this day that you got to get your franchise tag player signed for long-term deals. We talked about Le'Veon Bell and kind of what the thinking was with him, and I brought up that hey, with him, he's a unique case because he could probably move out to be a receiver at some point in his career if you don't want him to keep getting hit so much. And in this negotiation, what he's trying to get done is to get paid as a number two receiver to justly bump up the whole running back pay scale. Because right now, on the franchise tag, he's going to make $8 million a year, whereas Kirk Cousins on the franchise tag is going to make like $24 million a year. So just the big disparity in the position and running back being one of the lowest paid now positions in the league, he's trying to get classified as like, hey, my value was more because I can do more, so pay me more. And in turn, he's thinking that that's going to help the other running backs as well. So he's going to be a very interesting case. The Steelers usually tend to look out for their own, especially players that they draft and come up through their system. They usually do a good job holding on to them. So it'll just be interesting to see at what number and guarantees and everything that Le'Veon Bell gets. As far as Aaron Donald, interesting. He's coming in, new coach, new regime. Um, you figure that maybe this year he might kind of forego kind of the contract talk just to kind of get in and get in good with the new staff and kind of be a leader and show that type of approach maybe, and just kind of let it be known in the press that, hey, I'm unhappy with my deal, but I'm here in camp and I'm showing up to be a team guy. But he's taking this approach, and I hope he gets his money because he is clearly the most dominating player on the defensive line in football right now. So whatever contract he's going after, he definitely deserves it. And then, when you pay your quarterback a whole bunch of money, the guy who basically is his bodyguard just feels like he should get a little bit more money too, because your quarterback can't look good if your left tackle isn't good. And so, Donald Penn's like, hey, I've been the standout past 3 seasons, and that's the thing with football. The rookie deals are so low as far as your salary. Yeah, it's cool to make $50 million at one time when you sign your name, and then all of a sudden they throw all this money in your bank account. But then it sucks when you actually play football every week and you get beat up and your check's like $110,000.
And it's interesting you bring up. It's interesting that you bring up the money right now because uh, Odell Beckham Jr. kind of spoke out within his own desire to be quote unquote the highest paid player in the league. Um, he is speaking to his value more than anything else. And not only has Beckham outperformed his contract, but he is saying on a sentiment where football is slowly becoming his job. It's a business where he's an at will employee. Um, he feels like he's a top three wide receiver, and he's making only 1.8 million a year, which is essentially robbery. Um, he's in camp, he's doing what he's supposed to do, but he feels like he wouldn't be he would be remiss if he didn't speak out. So
Right. Yeah,
that's
I mean,
that's
I mean, there's
mhm.
there's different approaches. You can be the guy who shows up and speaks out, and I mean, everybody knows in the front office, the beat reporters, the other players, everybody knows that when you get to this, third and fourth year of a rookie deal, and you've been a three-time Pro Bowl player, and you've got all the endorsements, things like that, everybody knows that you're grossly underpaid as far as your quote unquote contract goes. So, everybody knows that the rumbling is coming, and some teams are just smart and say, okay, we'll rip it up and, start you over, pay you, your little $1 million that you're going to make. And then next year, the extension kicks in and you make whatever your market value is. And some teams like to play it the long way. Hey, you know, of course, Odell's, on the field antics probably don't help him out in the negotiating room when it's like, oh, well, we want to see you keep your nose clean for another season before we negotiate and give you all this money because we don't want to see you, get paid and then everything goes haywire just because of what his past has been. But, if he's not going to get it from the Giants, he's going to get it from somebody. So it's better to keep these once in a generational players on your team than let them go to somebody else and be fantastically great. Tyler, you're actually on mute right now, bud.
This is the key. You're talking about non-guaranteed contracts, and I think that
Right.
eventually something's going to have to be done. Richard Sherman has already come to the forefront about players striking, which I think it's impossible right now because you don't
Right.
have enough leverage to get
Well,
enough players to strike for you. And on top of that, he brought up another issue: the fans. You're not going to get the fans to support you in a strike.
and plus the NFL, they on the average have the most players living basically check by check. I know that's hard to fathom as as a working regular person that a professional athlete would be living basically check by check, but they have more guys on the fringes, like more just regular paid guys. And there's no way that the 5% of guys at the top can ask those 95% of the guys at the bottom to be like, hey, sit out a year and not make any money and, you know, whatever bills and things that you have accrued that you're figuring you're going to pay off when you get your football checks start coming back to you. You know, it's going to be hard. That may last for, in the summertime, that may be cool when the checks aren't supposed to come. But when you start getting to, Halloween and you're supposed to be getting that first paycheck, things change up a lot quickly for those guys at the bottom than your Drew Breeses and your Richard Shermans and your guys who've had two or three contracts and sit nice and presumably have invested well and done those things. So NFL is in a difficult situation with their business model because everybody agrees that the players should get paid a lot more than they do. But with the injury risk, there's no way that the owners wouldn't just be always in the red. So, they're going to have to kind of find a balance. Maybe the way that Kirk Cousins is operating on this kind of year to year guaranteed money, big lump sums of money, it might be the new way that players have to go for a while to kind of secure that just nest egg of cash versus having the security of, well, I'm going to be here for 4 years making, $5 million a season or whatever for these next 4 years. They may instead just have to say, well, let me play this 1 year at this 20 and speed up these 4 years and then, maybe play another year again on the contract. And then now we've got $50 million of actual real money. And now I can go out here and sign a long term contract. And if they cut me in 2 seasons, I've made $70 million of actual money.
And we
Because a lot of these NFL contracts, even though they're really big and they have really big numbers, the way they work it is, let's say they sign you for 8 years at 64 million. Well, what they'll do is they'll give you 32 of that 64 million up front. So now you have really like an 8 year contract at 32 million, and now you're getting $4 million broken up into 16 different paychecks.
paychecks, right? And when you get your paychecks, we want you to spend some of it at Amazon. You visit cspn.us, and then you click on the Keep Our Podcast Free link at the top of the page. And from there, you can scroll down and click on the Amazon link to shop. And when you get your paychecks, you need to purchase items from Amazon as you normally would, whether it's books, music, electronics, jewelry, and apparel. And for every purchase made on Amazon through our link, Amazon sends to CSPN a payment that helps keep the podcast free for our listeners at no extra cost to you. Don't forget Amazon.com through CSPN.us. Do it today. And as we look at folks and their paychecks getting a little bit smaller, we go to Baltimore, where center John Urschel has announced his retirement from the NFL to pursue a career in mathematics. This is related to the report that came out earlier this week that in a research study, out of 110 brain scans following players that played football, 109 of them, or practically 99%, came out positive for the disease CTE, which is a syndrome that affects cognitive reasoning in the brain. John Urschel is he's been pretty famous for his smarts. He even got featured in a commercial with J.J. Watt earlier this summer. He's
also the guy who plays in the commercial they have out now where he's playing chess with all the kids, right? It's like 50 different games of chess, and he's just like walking down the line. That's him, right?
That is him. He's actually going to pursue a PhD full time at MIT. He wrote a piece 4 seasons ago in the Players Tribune called "Why I Still Play Football," where he talked about Chris Borland, who's the man who walked away from the NFL at 24 and returned a $463,000 signing bonus uh, because of the fears of CTE. Um, Ursul is going to pay back about 36 grand of his 4 year bonus that he got when he signed as a rookie. Um, he's known for his passions, as we mentioned, chess and uh, and math. He's a big math guy, and he feels like he wants to take advantage of this opportunity um, to do research while he still has all of his faculties, literally. Um, you also have this CTE stuff can also affect um, high schoolers. You look at Brevin White, who is a nationally ranked quarterback, brother who was going to be a starter at Arizona State. Um, White appeared on the Dan Patrick Show this week to explain why he's going to be attending Princeton over several Power Five BCS schools, um, including Arizona State, where his brother is. Um, do you think that this issue with CTE is going to affect decisions of players, not only where they go to school, but uh, just a focus on seeking quality educations? As White indicated, he felt like he would have a more powerful network if he went through the process of going to Princeton and earning his degree from there instead of playing for a Power Five school, because he feels like the NFL could find you anywhere.
Um, I think CTE is going to greatly diminish the pool of future football players. Guys who have already gotten to this high school, college level, pro level that are in it. Okay, the risk is what the risk is. Hopefully, they can, you know, find out some measures to have less risks. But I think what this study does is somebody who may have a 6 year old son right now and is looking at their kid going, I want to put him in sports. I think football gets taken off the list completely now, just because, you want to look out for your kid down the line 50 years from now. And playing football is obviously, I mean, we already knew the physical tolls on hips and joints and knees and things like that. But now that it's, really affecting your brain and how you function as far as your thinking and your memory and just your behavior changes and things like that. That's very scary for a parent of a young kid, because they're saying that if you play any type of football at this point, that you're susceptible to this. It's not like blowing your knee out where some guys play their whole career, never have a knee injury, and some people are Thomas Davis and blow the knee out back to back. So there's no randomness to it as in all the other injuries that seem to occur on a football field. I think it may lead to more of a look at not only equipment but just the fundamentals of playing football again may have to be reevaluated. I mean, as far as tackling, guys not tackling with their helmets, trying to hit guys more with their shoulders and wrapping up with more of a form, bringing their bodies and not just leading with their heads. But that still doesn't really compensate for what the linemen do, because I mean they basically go face to face, crash into each other 100 times a game. So, they would still get the effects of having their brains moved around. So, I mean, we're probably, it used to be the future when we watched it on the Jetsons, but I mean, we're probably really going to be watching mech football one day where it's going to be android machines out there playing the game because the toll on a human body is just too much.
Just a reminder that you are listening to the CSPN. This is Know the Score. Don't forget to follow us on KTS Pod, and eventually during our season, during football season particularly, you can find us on our hashtag KTS Pod. We're now going to talk about our first divisional preview. The AFC Eastern Division. Uh, you have four teams that make up the AFC East: the New England Patriots, Miami Dolphins, uh, Buffalo Bills, and the New York Jets. The New York Jets, and that's essentially the order of finish, pretty much for this season. Um, we can first start talking about the New England Patriots. Of course, last season they won the Super Bowl in dramatic fashion, coming back from being down 28-3. However, they emerged as one of the winners of the offseason in free agency, having picked up one of the top DBs in the NFL in Stephon Gilmore at corner. And they also picked up a dangerous slot receiver in Brandon Cooks. They also added Trey Flowers. Um, I There's already talks about the Patriots actually going undefeated once again. Um, what's your viewpoint on the New England Patriots?
Uh, New England is loaded, man. I mean, the few little cracks that they did have, as far as secondary not being as strong as it had been in the past, they shored that up by getting Stephon Gilmore. Not having a deep threat, somebody who could stretch the field, be a quick strike option for Brady. They fixed that by trading for Brandon Cooks. They brought back Hightower, so their linebacking core is stable. Um, LeGarrette Blunt led the league in rushing touchdowns last year. So, I mean, they're efficient when they get in the red zone, throwing or passing. I, I don't know if they're going to go undefeated just because it's very hard to have that focus for 16 weeks and injuries, creep in there and so forth and so on. But, I mean, just as we start the season, just looking through this long scope, yeah, they're definitely the favorites. And, this division, if anybody gets within 3 games of them, it'll be a miracle. Because I mean, Patriots are going to be 14, 15 win team again this year.
As we look at the other three teams in the division. Um, I'm just going to be upfront. Not We're not going to even think about other teams qualifying for the playoffs. Can any of these teams get to 9 wins? I mean, it's pretty bad.
Depending on the schedule and just another year of advancement for Ryan Tannehill and Adam Gase as a head coach and play caller, the Dolphins would be my team to get to the 9 win edge, maybe 10 if field goal goes right or lucky bounce the ball. The second half of the year, their passing game finally caught up to their running game. Jai had a couple of 200-yard rushing games, and then people started kind of focusing on him, and then Tannehill and Parker and Landry and Steels as well. Kind of got going, and so the second half of the season they looked really good. It's just their pass defense leaves a little to be desired, and that's kind of in that division where you're playing against Brady twice a year. That's the one place where you really can't be faulty is on pass coverage. So if they can kind of sure up their secondary, we know what their line is. Their line is one of the best defensive lines in the league. Their linebacking core is pretty fast. So if they can get their secondary, straightened out, the Dolphins could, contend for a wild card.
Yeah, that was before picking up. Speaking of their defensive backfield, that was before picking up Byron Maxwell, who has gotten the infamous Toast nickname from several media outlets. So uh, Maxwell's going to have a lot to prove as he steps in for the Dolphins because he's going to get a lot of attention being thrown his way. Um, and as for Buffalo has a lot of offensive pieces. However, the defense is terrible. They made a great draft pick in taking to Darius White from USC. I mean, he's pretty good, but I really don't know what they're going to have on the defensive end because they had a lot of injuries, particularly to Shaq Lawson and Reggie Ragland, who were probably going to be the two best defensive players. Much talk was about them playing right away, and then of course they get hurt. So um, Sean McDermott, the new coach, has some work to do. He's an offensive guy, so I expect Buffalo to be a little bit better, but not a threat to the Dolphins for that wild card.
That's not the guy who used to be with the Panthers, Sean McDermott. I thought he was in
That's
the
exactly
Indiana.
who it
But
is.
anyway,
Yeah, mm-hmm. He
yeah.
is.
So I think that Tyrod Taylor is actually going to benefit the most because he's going to come from Ron Rivera school of coaching, which means you've been dealing with Cam Newton and that kind of style of player. And also, defensive coaches seem to have a lot more tolerance for the running quarterback because they understand by having to prepare for them as defense coordinators that the running quarterback does pose a unique threat. So defensive coaches kind of let the running quarterbacks tend to not try to rein them in as much as a offensive minded coach would. So I think that defensively that they're kind of going to be in a good spot because he's going to let Tyrod Taylor do what he does. If Sammy Watkins can come back and play a full season with his foot, and give them that outside deep threat. Shady McCoy was like third in the league in rushing touchdowns. He's always a threat to take it 60 whenever he touches the ball. So if the defense can kind of get with what Sean McDermott is going to bring, he's not going to really play a lot of fancy defense. He doesn't, the Panthers weren't really a blitz heavy team. They were just very, fundamentally sound, play gap control. Big guys take up the blocks on the running game, linebackers shoot in there, make all the tackles, and then, just be, a good tackling team in the secondary. And, I don't know if Buffalo really is going to need a lot of spectacular talent on defense because they're not going to really play a style. If he kind of brings what he brought from Carolina over to Buffalo, they're not going to really be playing an attacking, aggressive, in your face style. So if they're just fundamentally sound, their defense may jump up enough where they can, get 7, 8, 8, and 8 again. Maybe, be on the fringes, be, last 2 weekends of the season, they're mathematically alive for a playoff berth.
And finally, we have the Jets. Oh boy. 0-16 maybe. The most of
It's the NFL, man. Nobody goes 0-16. It's hard to go 0-16. It's hard.
well, I mean, we can talk to a guy that was just resigned, Dan Orlovsky, who who led the great Detroit Lions to the last 0-16 record.
Now they still have, excuse me, they still have Bowles as their coach, right?
Yeah, yeah, and this is
Okay.
going to be a major year for Bowles because Bowles being a defensive guy, uh, his basically his top five players are on the defensive side of the ball. So you don't expect the Jets to get blown out or give up a ton of points because they can obviously control the line of scrimmage their with Muhammad Wilkerson, Sheldon Richardson, and Leonard Williams. Um, that's not going to be the issue. The issue is uh, what kind of offense are they going to have? I mean, I really have no idea how they're going to move the ball.
Yeah, that's a big question because their two best weapons, Brandon Marshall and Decker, are no longer with the team. Uh, they have question mark at quarterback. Yeah, nobody knows what they're really going to do there. Um, Whoever their running back and their field goal kicker is, they're gonna probably be their best two offensive players once the season is over with because that's probably what it's gonna come down to. They're gonna try to start every game off, sticking with the running game, and then maybe trying to make a play or two over the top after they've established their run. And with lack of receivers that anybody is really, except for the kid who was a rookie last year, kind of Brandon. Marshall Clone, he may have a big season down in the red zone, but I see them kicking a lot of field goals just because their offense stalls out, and the shorter field you can, the main people you need to cover, it's a little bit easier to cover them once you get to a short field. So yeah, the Jets could, lose a lot of games by 3 points, 7 points, 10 points, but I like you. I don't think they're gonna get, blown out. I don't think you're gonna see any 31 to threes or anything like that too often.
Yeah, I see them make the most have them at projected at 5 wins. And I can't see them getting to five. I would say probably 3-13 ball bounces. Um,
But the thing with the Jets is they have to decide very early, and this is more of a scouting department, general manager. This has nothing to do with the actual on field because if everybody projects you're going to be bad. They have to identify right now, is there a quarterback that we want in this draft, and how bad do we have to be to get him? Can we be, 6-10 bad and still get them, or do we have to be 2-14 bad to be able to get them? And that's kind of where they need to kind of be thinking, because as with most teams, that's the one position that's the hardest to ever get is the quarterback. It's real easy to look at a running back and say, "Yep, that's our running back. Yep, that's our DN. Yep, that's our left tackle." Quarterback just doesn't seem to work that way for most teams. So you have to start kind of thinking 3, 4 seasons ahead, maybe 2 seasons ahead, like right now, because the Jets are in that mode where if Bowles doesn't do well, he's probably going to get fired. So new coach, new quarterback, it all works in together usually. So if I was the Jets front office, that's where my head would be at. I would be thinking draft and who is the quarterback that we can realistically want, and where do we have to finish to get them.
okay. Um, we're going to give you a schedule idea. Um, as we know, all the teams in this division will play against the AFC, of course, AFC East twice, the NFC South, the AFC West, and then two teams that finished in the same spot they did that are not in those three different divisions. So, for
So that
example,
means that the Patriots are going to play Dallas.
they got Atlanta and they got Houston.
Oh, y'all got lucky. Y'all got so lucky. I'm looking forward to the Oakland New England game.
And that game is actually going to be in Mexico.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
And it's
that's going to
and
be a
it's
lot of fun.
and it's actually um, the third of three consecutive road games in that late season stretch where they play 5 of 7 on the road or in neutral territory. So there is your threat. Um, Me personally, if I were to pick, having seen the schedule, um, I would say Patriots go 13-3. Um, you got a prediction? Give me a second. I will give you the schedule real quick.
Man, I think they're going to do the same thing they did last year, 14-2. If you don't get them in the very first game, then you probably won't get them until they start resting players at the end, or Tom starts playing half right there towards the end of the season before they start resting folks. But um, unless something major happens to Tom Brady between now and the regular season starting or the first game, I, yeah, it's gonna be hard for anybody to really, because they keep their health intact, to be close to them.
All right, so the Patriots go uh, Chiefs at Saints, Texans, Panthers at Bucks, at Jets, Falcons at home on October 22nd, Chargers at Broncos on November 12th. Uh, Raiders in Mexico on November 19th. Thanksgiving weekend, Dolphins come to town at Bills. Dolphins again at Dolphins December 11th. At the Steelers on December 17th. Uh, last two games are at home against the Bills, Christmas Eve, and then New Year's Eve to close out the regular season. Home against the Jets. So it's not bad.
So the way that I handicap football games is a lot of times I just basically break it down to the most simplest common denominator. Who has the best quarterback? And out of all those 16 games you just named, nobody has a better quarterback than Tom Brady
Nah.
at any of those teams. So that's the reason why I think the Patriots are going to win more games than they lose, just because now if you run like my team schedule up against the teams they're going to play this year, 6 or 7 of those games, I'll be like, yeah, Kirk Cousins is not better than this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Automatically replaying from a deficit because, what I'm saying, I expect the opposite quarterback to make more plays than Cousins does. So, that's kind of, if you're a Patriots fan, you have to feel so good in every game because you got the best player on both teams every time the ball gets, kicked off.
All right. We're going to go to the Miami Dolphins game by game schedule. Um, Opening weekend. This is already interesting. They start with the Buccaneers coming into town and Jameis Winston. Uh, then they get Philip Rivers and the Chargers, at Jets, home against the Saints on October 1st. Uh, Titans coming to Miami on October 8th. Then they're at the Falcons. Uh, then they're home against the Dolphins, at the Ravens on the 26th. Uh, they get Oakland on November 5th, at Panthers on the 13th, at Patriots on the 26th, Broncos on December 3rd, Patriots at home on December 11th, at Bills, uh, at Chiefs, and then the Bills come home on New Year's Eve. So that little right in the midst, that towards the end, that's pretty rough. Baltimore, Oakland, Carolina, New England, uh, Denver, and then New England again. Ouch.
Yeah, these are the Dolphins we're talking about, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, see, again, like when you look at most of these teams, Tannehill's not going to be better than a lot of these quarterbacks. He may be better than Simeon, but that sucks on his part because Denver's defense is so good, it may negate that advantage that he would have. So that automatically is another game that, he's going to be facing a deficit. Yeah, their schedule's kind of rough.
Yeah.
Dolphins, yeah, they'll be lucky if they get the 9 because they could beat the Titans. The Saints are a very interesting team. I am very interested to see kind of what they look like, just with having Adrian Peterson and knowing that, and Mark Ingram, and knowing that Sean Payton really ain't, a running type of offensive coordinator, play caller guy. He likes to throw the ball, so we'll see, just how that's going to work out. So yeah, the now that I see this in front of me, yeah, if they go 8-8, that's a good season for them.
I'm gonna say that this year the ball does not bounce their way as many times as it did last year. I'm gonna put them at 6-10. Uh, the next schedule we look at will be the Buffalo Bills, and actually, speaking of the schedule not doing the Dolphins any favors, while the Patriots get the Texans and Falcons both at home, Miami's got to go to Baltimore and go to Atlanta. The Bills get the they start out interesting. They get an interesting start. Uh, they get the Jets at home, at Carolina, uh, Broncos at home, at Falcons, at Bengals, Buccaneers at home, Raiders at home, at Jets. Uh, November 12th, Saints come in at Chargers, at Chiefs. Uh, then they got home with the Patriots, Colts, and Dolphins. That's a nice little 3 game string at the home. Maybe you can pull an upset or two there. And then the last 2 games at Patriots, at Dolphins.
Very interesting. They should beat the Jets, so that's 2 wins they should get. Um, I think defensively they're a little bit better than Miami, so that's at least another win they should have. You know, they should probably split with Miami. So they're up to 3, and I think San Diego is going to be an easy mark this year. You know, Philip Rivers, he's got interception problems. So yeah, you know, again, it looks like based on just looking at it now without people being injured and teams not playing any football that means anything, it looks like it's going to be a tough road for Buffalo to get to 6 wins. I think they're going to get 5-11.
I think 5-11 too. Um, I'm looking at splits um, with both Miami and um, sweep the Jets, split with Miami, lose twice to Buffalo. I think they can upset the Saints at home, and I think they're going to steal one between the Colts and the Chiefs. They'll steal one of those two. So yeah, that's about 5-11. And maybe if they can beat the Buccaneers 6-10. But yeah, that's about right. And we really don't have to look at the Jets because we know that they're not going to get above 5. But just out of courtesy, the Jets will start the season. Oh boy. They're at Buffalo, at Oakland. I think we need to try to count the wins as we go. At Buffalo, at Oakland, Dolphins, Jaguars at home, at the Browns. There's your first win. Um, Patriots come in on October 15th,
They might be
at
able to beat the
Dolphins.
Browns. They might be able to beat the Browns.
Yeah, yeah, I see Browns. Um,
They might be able to beat. They might be able to beat Jacksonville too, because I mean
yeah,
they're not. I mean, let's face it,
Jacksonville at
they're
home.
not world beaters over there.
Jacksonville at home.
Ja-
Yeah, against that
Jacksonville
defense.
always starts slow though.
This is true
Yeah, and
too.
they always start so slow.
And they beat them last year too. Um, okay, so that's possibly 2 wins. Uh, the 15th, you got the Patriots. 22nd at Dolphins. Um, then you got the Falcons on the 29th. Uh, Buffalo comes in. Then they go at the Bucks. Then you got 2 home games with the Panthers and the Chiefs. December 10th, you're at the Broncos, at Saints. Uh, Christmas Eve, the Chargers come in town, and then they finish the season with the rivalry at the New England Patriots. And I am struggling to find 2 more wins.
See, the Saints and Chargers are going to be the 2 wild cards because at that point in the season, they might be in like shutdown mode.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I don't really see the Chargers being that good this year. So they could that could be one of those draft pick position games towards the end
Hmm.
of the season, and
Yep.
those always get tricky. Especially if my man Bowles is out here trying to save his job, you know what I'm saying? So that might sneak in two extra ones and end up 5-11 when they probably really should have been 3-13 or 2-14.
I'm gonna stick with my guns. I'm gonna give them 2 wins. I'm gonna give them 2-14 and put them on the clock for the 2018 draft. Uh, you say 5-11. You want to say 4-12 or 5-11?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go just 4-12. I think that they're gonna sneak. I mean, Jacksonville's an easy mark in the beginning of the season. That first Miami game, because that's a rivalry type game between the Jets and the Dolphins. So that first one will be a toss up. Anything crazy can happen. Like I said, New Orleans towards the end of the season, I don't know. There's just such a I don't have a read on what they're going to be. So they may be, a team that kind of gives up an easy win to a bad team late in the season. So yeah, they may get a couple, and then of course they should beat Cleveland. I think they're better than Cleveland. So that's 4 wins right there. So 4-12.
All right. Well, that wraps up our predictions for the AFC East. Just to recap, I have New England at 13-3. Don has them at 14-2. Um, Miami, I have the Dolphins at 6-10. Don has them at 8-8. We both have the Bills at 5-11. Um, I have the Jets at 2-14, and Don has them going 4-12. Now, just want to remind you quickly that due to our producers being on vacation, um, we will not have a show on air next week. So we will double up on our previews. We'll likely we'll take two divisions out of the AFC, probably the Central and, well, uh, the North and the South, um, as we continue our football preview. So our next date that will hear us will be not next week on August the 6th, but likely be August the 13th as we continue our preview on the National Football League. Just remember that you're always invited to hear us here on KTS Pod. Uh, our Twitter is at KTS Pod. And don't forget to download us on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Podomatic, and on SoundCloud. We've come to the point where we're going to give our final thoughts. Don, anything beyond this week as of interest or anything in sports that you want to reflect on?
So the Yankees, the baseball is really starting to heat up. The races in the American League are starting to get really good. The Royals have won 9 in a row, and now they're just a half game back of the Indians. You've got the Yankees; they've been hot. They've overtaken the Red Sox, and they're up by half a game. In the National League, you've got the Cubs and the Brewers are having a big series this weekend. The Cubs has came out the All-Star break really hot. There's something like 11-2 before yesterday, and they lost their first game in the series to the Brewers. So the Brewers are a half game back. And last but not least, just give a tip of the cap to the Dodgers. I mean, they're playing just crazy, ridiculous baseball right now. 73-31. Just really fun to watch and getting it from hitting, pitching, defense. So baseball getting here to the end of July, getting into August, getting into the dog days, and so things are heating up. And the trade deadline is Monday, so we'll see if anybody makes a major move to kind of improve themselves. Still waiting on the Nationals if they're going to make another move to improve their bullpen or not. But other than that, man, I'm really looking forward to this baseball playoff coming up. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. New teams always excite me when it comes to the baseball playoffs.
I'm going to focus my final thought on a rivalry that uh, has become budding interest of the country in a budding sport. We're going to talk about UFC, and there's a by the time you hear this on Sunday, the fight will have already taken place. But what I'm going to talk about just doesn't necessarily have to do with what's in the octagon, but what's outside it. Of course, we're talking about John Bones Jones going up against Daniel Cormier in the light heavyweight championship. Um, this is another story in sports where uh, I believe that we give our athletes second chances um, before we give our own citizens second chances. I mean, me personally, I believe in them. I think we all have stories in our life where we have, friends or family members that, make bad decisions, um, but they're still among us and living. And because they have a job to do, and that is to be a successful member of society, despite their past and despite their, whatever wrongs that they may have done. Um, I think that the fight is a symbol of John Jones' chance at a road to not only personal recovery, but just um, not only physical recovery, but mental recovery as well. Um, I believe that in cases like his, um, we need to stand behind this guy as a person. Um, he's a lot of people feel that he's at fault of making bad decisions, and that's true. However, this is a chance where he can redeem himself and be at least on the road to redeeming himself in his personal life and get back to uh, entertaining millions and millions of fans who, obviously, no doubt have a respect and an admiration for him because of his quote unquote God given talent. Um, his family is athletically inclined. I mean, his brother is an outstanding player in the NFL, Chandler Jones. So he's been in that spotlight before. His family's in the spotlight. So he's going to have people that root for him just because. I also give Daniel Cormier, his opponent, some immense credit for uh, not really burying Jones when he had the chance after Jones repeatedly failed drug tests. Um, he has been an advocate for the fight. I mean, I know you have your promotional rivalries and things that are going to be said in the realm of promotion. I mean, we're dealing with that now with Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, but Cormier has been nothing but a class act with John, even outside of the UFC ring. Uh, but we hope that John steps up to the plate as far as being a competitive fighter, for one, making this a good fight, and then continuing after the fight to uh, regain his position as one of the top fighters in the UFC, and more importantly, regaining his position as a man and as a citizen. For myself, for Don De Laurenti, for Jesse at That's So Jesse on Twitter, and for our host Tobias Wilborn, and for our producer Classic Materia, and of course our producer in emeritus in Melanie, also known as Speedy Jackson. I am Tyler Ball, and now you know the score.